Most businesses require some sort of an online presence with a website. And while there are a lot of very good website hosting services, a lot of them can get expensive, and some of them even require long-term commitments. So what happens if you're a startup, you're a new business working out of your home office or your garage or whatever, and you need to pinch every penny? Well, the good news is that you can run your website by yourself. So let's talk about that. Welcome back to Mackie Tech, and today we're going to be looking at how you can run your own website from a web server, from a computer that you might have lying around the house that you bought within the last 5-10 years, that you can repurpose, as I said, to put your own website on using a web server. A lot of times when people hear the word server, they imagine some $10,000 behemoth on wheels that has to have its own closet. So no, the only criteria is that it has to remain on and it has to be connected to the internet. Now, web server's only job is to serve web pages. In other words, you go to a website and the web server shows you the type of web page that you're looking for. The other thing that it does is it will store all of your files and all of your documents and pictures that the website needs to run. So let's examine some benefits of using your own web server, as well as some disadvantages, so you can sort of make an informed decision. So what are the benefits of running your own web server in your own home or home office? Well, number one is you're going to be saving money because you're not going to be paying a third-party provider. Secondly is that you're not going to have to commit to any contracts, whether it be an annual contract or a 2-year contract, and you're going to have more control over your own content. But it isn't without its downsides. The first of which is the most important, being security. Now, since you're not a data center, you're not going to be as targeted, but you also don't have as many resources to defend yourself. The second, and arguably more important, is uptime. If you're hosting it yourself, there's more chance of your power going out, or perhaps your computer dies, or your ISP is out. All of those are going to impact your web server, obviously. If it's hosted by a third party, those concerns are pretty much negligible. Having said all that, having your own website isn't going to be for everybody, but it's a good option if you're just starting out or if you want to have a local presence on your local network for your staff to share files, or to have a wiki page, or to have a knowledge base, or something to host your own content management system of some sort. And that's what we're really going to be talking about. We're not talking about having a site for a 5,000 person company. That's not going to be realistic to host it yourself. There's just not enough resources. So today we're going to be looking at what's called LAMP. LAMP stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. The P at the end is the programming language, and that can be PHP, it can be Perl, it can be Python. You can also have another P, so it can be LAMP and then P, and the last P being PHPMyAdmin. PHPMyAdmin is essentially a way to manage your database or your MySQL server. So Linux is going to be your operating system. Apache, A, is going to be your web server. That's going to be essentially the component that serves the web server. M, as in Mary, is going to be the MySQL server, or in this case, it's also going to be what's called Maria database, which is essentially the same thing. As I mentioned, P is for PHP or your other scripting language of choice. And then the last P, as I mentioned, is PHPMyAdmin to manage the web server. Now we're going to be demonstrating this on Ubuntu version 24.04.1. And these examples will work on any Debian version of Linux. And Linux can run on any computer that was made in the last 5-10 years. So it doesn't have to be a powerhouse, as I mentioned earlier. So I'm not going to be doing a deep dive on installing Linux. I do have a video that I did a couple months ago on installing Linux Mint, which is very, very similar. It's based on Debian. So you can look at that. I'll link it in the description if you want a refresher course. I'm going to be installing this on a virtual machine on my Proxmox. I will be going through how to set up a quick virtual machine. Again, this is not going to be a deep dive on Proxmox or setting up VMs, but that's going to be where we're going to be starting from. So let's go ahead and install Linux on the VM, and then we're going to go ahead and install Apache. Stay tuned. Okay, so before I jumped into how to start a web server, I wanted to just show you real quickly. This is a web server that I am running on a virtual machine on Proxmox. And it's something that I put together over the years to track antiques that I sold for my family. And if you see, I can click up here. We have different tags for an estate sale database that I also have categories, sold categories, and I can browse through the different auctions that we had, and I have the pictures in there, and I have the amount it was sold for, item number, description. I can click on more details, and I can get a very low resolution picture of stuff that was sold, and it kind of gives me a breakdown. So let's go over to Proxmox, and this is version 8.2.8 that we're using, and I am in one of my storage pools that I have, and I have Ubuntu 2404.1 desktop environment for Linux. So let's go up to our node and click on create VM, and we're going to put it on node 1, which is fine. VM, I'm going to label it 7 and call it web server demo, and then go to the OS. ISO image is Ubuntu, Linux, don't need any of that. System, default, that's fine. SCSI controller, that looks good. Machine, that's fine. BIOS, I might have to tweak that. Do the QEMU agent for sure. Don't need TPM disk. I'm gonna go with 50 gigabytes CPU, that's fine. I don't need that many cores, although I'll just get 2 on that. Memory, let's go with 4096. 4 gigabytes should be more than enough. Network, virtualization, VBR, let's go with the VBR, that one, virtual LAN, and go to next, and let's go to finish, and we'll start it after it's created. Okay, so it's in the process of creating that, and we'll come right back. Okay, so Ubuntu 2404 has been installed. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is go into terminal, and we're going to do a system update. Let's make this a little bigger. Go to sudo apt update, and do apt upgrade. So we're just going to update the system really quick. Okay, our system is updated. So now let's go ahead and install our first application, which is going to be the web server, Apache. So we're going to do sudo apt install Apache 2. And yes, I will put all of these in the discussion notes. Let that install. So that is installed. Now, Apache by default will install to this directory here that we're going to navigate to, var www.html. Well, let's navigate to that, and we do a directory search, and we see, let's do this again actually, let's do ls. We can see that it has a default, an HTML document in here, and that is an index. Now most websites, their default welcome page will be a index.html. What we're going to do is we're going to open up a web browser within this server, get that open, and we're going to type in localhost. And localhost is this web server that we're on, this web server here. It's web server 2. And so we go to localhost. This is basically telling us that our web page is working just fine. So we already have a web server. So in order to test this, just to make sure that I'm not pulling your leg, let's go back to the terminal, and we're going to modify this web page a little bit. Just make some changes in there so you can see that we're making changes. We're going to modify this index.html document. So we'll go to sudo nano index.html. Okay, and here is the document. And we'll go down to the body of the actual HTML. And here is the Apache default web page, just to show you that again. Apache default web page, it works. So if we go into here, this is under the body, Mackie Tech page, and change this to awesome. So we're just changing a couple things within the body on the website, and we're going to go ahead and save it by doing Control O and saying yes, we want it to be saved as HTML. And then Control X is going to exit it. Let's go back to the web page and see. Mackie Tech page, awesome. All we did is we refreshed it. It's the same document. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and install PHP. So we'll go to sudo apt install php.yes. Okay, so we installed PHP. And again, PHP is the programming language you're using of choice. And after that's installed, we're going to do a quick restart of Apache really quick. So we'll go sudo service Apache, typo there. All right. So now we're going to do another test. So we're going to do sudo nano, and we're going to call this index2.php. And I'm going to write just a real quick PHP script here, just so you can see that this is working. Echo and we'll close that out. And we'll do this again. We'll go to Control-O to save it. And yes, index.php. And then we're going to go ahead and close out. So first we need to find out what the web server's IP address. So I'm going to type in hostname I. And here is our IP address, 192.168.1.134. So let's navigate to that. And here's our Mackie Tech Awesome page. So what we're going to do is we're going to slash and type in index2.php. And here is the PHP file we made. So this is my Mackie Tech website. So the PHP script worked, the PHP is working, and so is the web server itself. So we have two files in there that are both working, and both things are installed. So now that we have the web server itself installed and we have the programming language PHP installed, we're going to go ahead and add the database, the MySQL. So for MySQL, we're going to do sudo apt install MariaDB.server PHP. So as you can see, we actually installed MariaDB, Maria Database, which is essentially the same thing as MySQL. So it is MySQL, it's just kind of a different flavor. And now what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of security. So I'm going to go to sudo. What we're doing here is that we're basically securing the MySQL installation. Now it's asking for a password. Now this is not going to be the password for your Linux install. This is going to be a password for the Maria database. So you want to make sure that you're not confusing the two. The root user is, well, the root. That's the default admin user. So for the root, I'm going to use this password here. So now we're going to click on no. And we're going to remove anonymous users. And we're going to disallow, and we're going to say yes to disallow remote login remotely. And we're going to remove test databases and access to it. And reload privileges table. And we are going to reload the privileges table. Yes. And so once you've completed it, you should see a message down here that says all done. You completed all the above steps. MariaDB installation should now be secure. So that's great. All right, so let's go ahead and clear that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to install what's called PHPMyAdmin. And so in order to do that, we're going to do a sudo apt install admin-y. Let that do its thing. And we're going to be using Apache 2, which is fine. It's going to go ahead and configure it. Okay, so here are some other questions that the PHPMyAdmin is asking. We definitely want to configure the database to use the the DB config common, so that's yes. And now it's going to want us to enter in the application, So now it's asking for our password that we just set when we initially installed MySQL. So we have the PHPMyAdmin installed so we can manage our database. However, it's not going to be very interesting because we don't have any real database yet. We haven't created anything. So what I'm going to show you is I'm going to go to my other database that I have for my antiques website that we looked at earlier. So I'm going to log into that. And here we are within the PHPMyAdmin. And if I click on the WordPress that I created, and these are the two tables, antiques and estates. So these are all the different entries. You can see that we have item numbers, we have categories, we have descriptions, the amount it was sold for, the date. So that's just what the database does, is it maintains all of your entries that you put in here. The cool thing also is you can export this. You can export it into an Excel folder, or rather a CVS for Excel, and it takes all of the columns, all of the rows, all of the information in them and puts them into a CSV file so that, it's for backup purposes. So now that we have our web server installed, as well as our programming language, our SQL database, our database management tool, the last ingredient is to get a website name. And for that, we're going to be using a free DDNS service. Now, DDNS stands for Dynamic Domain Name Service, meaning that even if your web server's IP address changes, the website will still work. We're going to be using a service called NoIP, and there are no shortage of other DDNS services. You can see right down here, there's EasyDNS, there's Cloudflare. Cloudflare is actually very, very cool, but NoIP is the one usually we use. So we're going to go ahead and click on sign up for free. Then all you do is you click on sign up, you put in your email address and your password, and click on free sign up. It'll probably ask you to verify your email address, and then you're good to go. After you've done that, go ahead and log in. Okay, so once we're logged in, we're going to click on No IP host name in the far left-hand corner, and you can see that I've already signed up for mine. We're going to use macitech.ddns.net. I have my web server's IP address right here. When you create one, we're going to click on Create Host Name. You type in the name of the server that you want it to be, my website, and then we're going to go over to the domain and select which domain we want. There are enhanced domains and there are also free domains in this list. So note that no IP defaults to your public IP. So we'll need to change that so it goes to your web server we're setting up. And, to stress, this is going to be a local intranet website. This tutorial is not about creating a public website. If you do want this to be public, you can certainly do that. You would just need to maintain your public IP address in there and then put your web server IP address on your router to forward it. I'm not a fan of doing that. So we're going to go ahead and create the host name by clicking here first. And then after it's created, you'll have your host name here, and then you go over to modify, and then you can go in and put in a different IP address in here for your actual web server. Now, there is a second ingredient to all of this, what's called a dynamic update client that you need to download on your platform of choice. In this case, we're using Linux. What that does is it modifies things in the background. When your IP address change, it'll update the IP address within no IP so that the website continues to work. We're going to skip that process for today, but I will leave this link in the description for the different platforms. Okay, so here we are back on our web server. We're going to go ahead and open up Firefox, and we're going to type in Mackie, and there's our web page. So works fine. Now, this is not SSL encrypted. That's something we can do also if we want to. But that is the basics for putting together your small business or your home office website for internal purposes. If you want to collaborate with your staff, or if you want to have internal pages to help out your workflow, that's how you're going to put that together. So today we looked at how to install your own web server out of your home office or small business. and we looked at how to use LAMP, Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP as your base to do that. Again, this is designed for people working out of their home or a small business of like maybe 5-6 people. It's not designed for some huge corporation. So if you found this video useful for your purposes as a tinkerer or a small business owner, please give it a like and make sure you're subscribed to Mackie Tech so you don't miss any other videos that are coming. And let me know what you're using. If you're using an old machine, or if you're using a NAS of some sort, or perhaps on another virtual machine, let me know in the comments. Thank you again all for watching, and we'll be talking to you again very soon. Bye for now.